I have a confession to make. Last night at approximately 1:30 in the morning, I was lying in bed, blue light blasting into my retinas, and I saw a link. It was a picture of a child star I haven't thought about since maybe 1998, and the headline was just 3 words: "You won't believe."
And let me guess, you clicked.
I clicked. Of course I clicked. I mean, I had to know. And was the result believable? Yes. It was completely, utterly mundane. They just, grew up and became a real estate agent. But in that moment, I was possessed.
Yeah.
Welcome back to The Deep Dive. I'm your host, and today we are tackling the very thing that stole, a good 10 minutes of my sleep last night.
We are talking about the internet's favorite trap, clickbait.
It's the mosquito of the digital age. It really is. We all claim to hate it, we roll our eyes at it, we mock the one weird trick ads, and yet the numbers, which we're definitely going to get into, suggest that we are all collectively addicted to it.
Well, it's a fascinating paradox, isn't it? We say we want high-quality, nuanced information, but our thumbs vote for the sensational.
So today isn't just about making fun of bad headlines, though, let's be honest, we will definitely be doing some of that. It's a deep dive into the mechanics of attention. We're going to look at the psychology that makes that curiosity gap so painful to ignore. We're going to trace the history back way further than I expected, like long before the internet even existed.
And we really have to look at the economics. Because that headline you clicked last night wasn't an accident. It was the tip of a very large, very expensive iceberg designed to monetize your cognitive vulnerabilities.
That makes me feel slightly better about my lack of willpower. It's not me, it's the system.
Well, let's not let you off the hook entirely just yet. We'll definitely get to the question of agency later. But to start, we really need to define what we are even talking about. Because in preparing for this, I realized the definition itself is like the subject of a massive war in the media industry.
Yeah, I saw that in the sources. There's this whole debate. Is a headline clickbait just because it's interesting? Or does it have to be a lie?
Exactly. Is it hype or is it fraud?
Okay, let's unpack this.
So if we look at the word itself, clickbait, it's incredibly visceral. It's an aggressive term. It comes, obviously, from phishing.
Which, when you really stop and think about it, is a pretty dark analogy for how we consume content.
It is. I mean, think about the mechanics of phishing. You have a hook. That hook is sharp, it is dangerous, and its sole purpose is to capture the fish. And no fish in its right mind is going to bite a bare metal hook.
Right. If I see a bare link that just says, "We want to show you ads so we make money," I'm swimming right past that.
Precisely. So you have to disguise the hook. You put a worm on it. You put a shiny lure on it. You create the illusion of value a meal. The fish bites the meal, but the reality is the hook.
And in this analogy, the meal is the headline or like the thumbnail image, and the hook is the actual page view.
Yes. The publisher needs you to swallow the hook, to follow the link so they can serve that impression to the advertiser. Once you are on the page, you're caught. Whether you enjoy the content is, well, it's actually secondary to the fact that you arrived.
That's the core cynicism of it all. But there's a specific psychological trigger that makes the bait work so well. It's not just, ooh, shiny. It's something called the curiosity gap. And I was reading up on this. It's actually rooted in some pretty heavy behavioral science.
It is, yeah. This concept was largely popularized by George Lowenstein, who's a behavioral economist at Carnegie Mellon.
Okay.
He developed what's called the information gap theory.
And the theory is basically that not knowing something physically hurts.
Right.
Is that it?
It's close. Lowenstein argued that curiosity isn't just a mental state. It's a form of cognitive deprivation. When you perceive a gap between what you know and what you want to know, it creates this feeling of deprivation. It's like an itch.
That is exactly what it feels like. When I saw that headline about the child star, it wasn't that I genuinely cared about that specific actor. It was that the headline created a hole in my knowledge. You won't believe what happened. Well, now I have to know what happened or I can't go to sleep.
And that's the dopamine loop. The headline creates attention. That's the gap. Clicking the link resolves the tension. It gives you a tiny little hit of dopamine relief. It's not about gaining knowledge. It's about scratching the itch.
So the classic clickbait structure. This man found a box in his wall and you won't believe what was inside. That's just weaponizing that sense of deprivation.
Perfectly. I mean, if the headline said, "Man finds old coins in wall," the gap is closed. You have the information. You don't need to click. By withholding that one key piece of information, the what, they hold your attention hostage.
But okay, here is where I get stuck. Because if the definition of clickbait is just withholding information to create suspense, Then isn't every mystery novel clickbait? Isn't the trailer for the new Marvel movie technically clickbait?
This is the absolute crux of the debate. Where's the line between good storytelling and, manipulation? And this isn't just an academic question. This was the central conflict between two giants of the internet age, BuzzFeed and Facebook.
Right, this was back around 2014, wasn't it? The golden age of lists.
The era of the listicle, exactly. And Ben Smith, who was the editor-in-chief of BuzzFeed at the time, made a very famous, very public defense of his company. He argued that BuzzFeed did not do clickbait.
Which, that sounds insane. I
Yeah.
mean, BuzzFeed was the factory that built this stuff.
But listen to his logic for a second. Smith defined clickbait very, very strictly as dishonesty. He said, clickbait is when you promise one thing and deliver another.
So, the bait and switch.
Exactly. He used a specific example. Imagine a headline that says, a 5-year-old girl raised enough money to take her father, who has terminal cancer, to Disney World.
Okay, yeah, that grabs me. It's emotional, it's specific, I'd probably click.
It's absolutely designed to go viral. But Smith's argument was this. Is the story actually about that? If you click the link and you read a true, well-reported story about that girl and her father, then the headline isn't bait. It's just a good headline. It delivered on its promise.
I see his point. He's saying, don't blame us for packaging the truth in an interesting way.
Exactly. He's basically saying that if the content itself is good, then the headline is justified, no matter how emotional it is.
But wait, hang on. I'm not sure I buy that completely. Because even if the story is true, isn't there something a little manipulative about the way it's framed? I mean, if you are exploiting a personal tragedy just to get me to view an ad for car insurance, that feels slimy,
Yeah.
even if facts are straight.
And that is precisely where Facebook came down on the issue. Facebook realized that their users felt manipulated, regardless of whether the story was technically true, so they defined clickbait differently.
How so?
For them, it was about headlines that encourage clicking but don't tell you what you will see.
The you won't believe who just died style of headline.
Exactly that. Facebook argued that withholding the core information is the problem. Even if the person who died is a major celebrity, making me click just to find out who it is creates a bad user experience.
It wastes my time. It forces me to pay a click tax just to get the basic facts that should have been in the headline.
Right. And the expert consensus now, well, it usually leans toward the disappointment factor. The most functional definition of clickbait today is a headline that intentionally overpromises and underdelivers.
So it's about the ratio of promise to delivery.
Right. If I promise you the secret to eternal life, and the article says, eat more kale, that is 100% clickbait. Because the gap between the promise, which is immortality, and the delivery, which is vegetables, is massive.
And that disappointment, that feeling of being tricked, is what erodes trust over time.
Yes.
But, talking about trust and sensationalism, we tend to treat this as a purely modern problem.
Right.
We act like the internet came along and ruined the news. But when we looked into the history for this,
Yeah.
wow, we are not the first generation to deal with it.
Oh, not even close. Not by a long shot. If we connect this to the bigger picture, clickbait is just the latest technology for a very, very ancient practice. To really get it, we have to talk about the 1890s and the yellow journalism wars.
This is one of my favorite parts of media history. This is Pulitzer versus Hearst, right? The big newspaper barons.
The titans of the New York press, Joseph Pulitzer of the New York World, and William Randolph Hearst of the New York Journal.
And it's so funny. We think of Pulitzer now as this highbrow prize for excellence in journalism.
Which is deeply ironic, because back then, he was fighting a dirty, brutal war for circulation numbers. These papers were fighting for street sales. They needed people walking down the street to see a headline and buy the paper right then.
So the front page was the thumbnail.
The front page was the thumbnail, exactly. And they didn't have algorithms. They had newsboys shouting the headlines on street corners, so the headlines had to be loud. They developed a style that focused almost entirely on crime, on scandal, disaster, and just wild exaggeration.
The sources mentioned the Yellow Kid. That's where the name comes from, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. Hogan's Alley was this very early, very popular comic strip. It featured a kid in a yellow nightshirt. It was just wildly popular. And both papers fought over the cartoonist, Richard Outcault. The competition was so fierce that the papers themselves were just dubbed the Yellow Press.
But it wasn't just cartoons. I mean, they were actually fabricating news stories from whole cloth.
And this is where it gets really dangerous. The most famous example is the sinking of the USS Maine in 1898. The American battleship exploded in Havana Harbor, Cuba.
Right, and at first, nobody knew why it happened.
All the evidence now points to it likely being an accidental coal bunker explosion. But that's a boring headline. Coal dust accidentally ignites. Who's buying that paper?
But Spanish Mine blows up our ship. Now that sells.
Hearst's paper immediately ran illustrations, completely fake illustrations of Spanish mines with cables attached to the ship. They ran the headline, "Destruction of the warship Maine was the work of an enemy." They had zero proof, absolutely none. But it whipped the American public into such a frenzy that it arguably pushed the country directly into the Spanish-American War.
That's literally clickbait starting a war.
It is the ultimate consequence of engagement optimization. They optimized for outrage, and they got a war out of it.
That really puts our current problems into perspective. At least, a quiz titled, "Which Potato Are You?" isn't launching any missiles.
Not yet, anyway. Let's hope.
Please don't jinx it. But there's another historical term that came up in the sources, checkbook journalism.
Right. This is kind of a precursor to the modern celebrity gossip ecosystem. It's the practice of paying sources for information, often without any real verification.
Which sounds fine on the surface, until you realize that if you pay for dirt, people will just manufacture dirt for you.
Exactly. If I offer $10,000 for a story about a politician having an affair, suddenly everyone has a story about that politician having an affair. It completely removes the verification process. Howard Kurtz from the Washington Post wrote that this tabloid culture erased the old definitions of news. It prioritized the tawdry over the true simply because the tawdry was profitable.
And that right there, that's the bridge to the internet, the profit model. Because why do websites publish clickbait? It's not because they enjoy being annoying, it's because it pays.
You have to follow the money, always.
So let's break down the economics of this. Because I think people generally understand ads, but they might not understand the sheer scale of it all.
So the basic unit of the modern internet economy is the impression. When a page loads and an ad is shown to a user, tiny fraction of a cent changes hands. To make real money, you need millions or even billions of impressions.
Which means you need millions and millions of clicks.
And you need them cheaply. Think about it. If you spend 3 months investigating a complex financial scandal, that costs thousands of dollars in reporter salaries, legal fees, and so on. If you write a list of 10 cats that look like Hitler, that takes 20 minutes. If both articles get the same number of clicks.
The cats are infinitely more profitable.
Infinitely. But it gets even more sophisticated when we look at video platforms like YouTube. The algorithm there has evolved in a very specific way, and it has completely shaped the content we see.
The YouTube face, we've all seen it. The exaggerated open mouth, the wide eyes, the hands on the cheeks pointing at something with a big red arrow.
That exists for a very specific reason: high arousal emotion. The sources highlight a really important statistic that was revealed at the Consumer Electronics Show. YouTube executives admitted that most watch time on the platform does not come from people actively searching for things.
Wait, really? So it's not people typing in how to fix my sink?
Well, that happens, but the vast majority of time people spend on the site is spent watching videos that the recommendation engines serve to them. It comes from the up next sidebar or the homepage.
So the robot is the DJ. It's choosing the music for us.
The robot is the DJ, the gatekeeper, and the kingmaker. And that robot looks at two main things above all else: click-through rate, or CTR, and watch time.
CTR is just the percentage of people who see the thumbnail and actually click on it.
Right. If your video is shown to 100 people on their homepage and 10 of them click, you have a 10 per CTR. If only one clicks, you have a 1 per CTR. The algorithm is absolutely ruthless. If your CTR is low, it just stops showing your video to people. It assumes the video is bad, or at least that the packaging is bad.
So you have to be sensational. If you write a calm, accurate title like "My Thoughts on the New iPhone," and your competitor writes, "The iPhone is dead," and they get the click, you lose. You basically vanish from the platform.
It creates an intense evolutionary pressure. It's survival of the loudest. Creators aren't necessarily trying to be deceptive all the time. They are trying to survive in an ecosystem, an algorithm that fundamentally rewards hype.
It's a constant arms race. And the weapon is the thumbnail.
And this all spills over into what the platforms now call engagement bait. This is a little different from just getting you to click. This is about manipulating you once you are already there on the page.
Oh, this is the stuff that drives me up the wall on Facebook. Let's talk about the taxonomy of bait.
Yeah.
We have a list here, and I feel like I need to complain about them one by one.
Please, the floor is yours. Vent.
Okay, first one, vote baiting. This is when they post a picture and say, "Like for pizza, love for tacos."
It seems so innocent, right?
Yeah.
Just a fun little poll. But think about the algorithm. It just sees engagement. It sees you reacting. It doesn't know you're just voting for tacos. It thinks, wow, this user feels very strongly about this content. I should show this post to all of their friends.
It hacks the social graph. It forces my friends to see my taco preference just so the page gets more reach. It feels so cheap.
It is cheap and effective.
Okay, next one. Tag baiting. Tag friend who looks like this potato. Or tag a friend who would do this.
This is arguably worse because it drags a non-consenting third party into the interaction. You are basically using your social capital, your friendship, to feed the page's reach.
And then there's share baiting. This is the guilt trip one. Share this if you love your mom. Keep scrolling if you have no soul.
That is just pure emotional manipulation, plain and simple. It exploits social anxiety. Nobody wants to be the person who hates their mom, so you share it. It weaponizes your own self-image against you.
But the worst one, the one that I think is actually damaging to the world, is rage baiting.
Ah, yes, the nuclear option of engagement.
Explain how this works, because I feel like we are just drowning in this every single day.
Well, psychologically, high arousal emotions travel much faster online than low arousal ones. Sadness is a low arousal emotion. Contentment is low arousal. But anger is pure high-octane energy. It makes you want to do something, and on the internet, that something is usually commenting.
I can't believe they said this, or this is completely wrong.
Exactly. So publishers will intentionally write a headline that is wrong or offensive or incredibly stupid, specifically to get you to correct them in the comments.
The typo strategy, I've seen this a million times. They spell a word wrong in the title on purpose so that 500 people will flood the comments with, "You spelled there wrong, you idiot."
And the algorithm doesn't care why they are commenting. It can't tell the difference between praise and outrage. It just sees 500 comments and thinks, wow, this is a hot topic. Let's put it to the top of everyone's feed. Go viral.
So we are literally rewarding stupidity.
We are rewarding engagement. And it turns out that stupidity is very, very engaging.
Okay, so talk to me about the aesthetic of all this, specifically the chum box.
Ah, the bottom of the internet. The digital gutter.
You know exactly what I'm talking about. You finish reading a legitimate news article, you scroll down past the end of the text, and suddenly it's a grid of the most grotesque, bizarre images imaginable.
A 90-year-old woman looks like this now. Doctors are begging you to throw out this one vegetable.
And it's always a picture of, like, a diseased foot or something covered in holes. It's horrifying.
They call that the chum box, and the name it comes from chum, which is the fish bait made of chopped up fish guts and blood that you throw in the water to attract sharks.
Ugh. Gross, but
Yeah.
very accurate.
These are ad networks like Taboola or Outbrain. They use a very specific visual language. It's always designed to appeal to prurient interest or greed.
Prurient meaning sex.
Sex, bodily fluids, the gross out factor, or get-rich-quick schemes. It appeals directly to the lizard brain. They use numbered lists and extreme information gaps. They're the absolute bottom feeders of the digital ecosystem, but they are incredibly profitable for the news sites that host them.
It's amazing to me that a legitimate newspaper will have high-quality, Pulitzer-winning journalism up top,
Right.
and then they'll sell the basement to the toe fungus people for ad revenue.
It just shows you how desperate the revenue model for online news has become over the years.
But there is a darker side to this curiosity gap than just bad ads and gross-out pictures. The sources we looked at mention phishing and malice.
Yes, and this is important. We shouldn't think of clickbait as just an annoyance. It is a genuine vulnerability. And hackers use the exact same psychology to exploit us.
The classic check out this video of you scam.
Exactly. If I send you an email that says, attached is the quarterly financial report, you might open it, eventually. But if I send an email with the subject line, urgent, is this you in this photoshopped image? Wow, your panic and your curiosity completely override your logical brain. You click the link and boom, malware is installed on your machine.
The curiosity gap is a security flaw in the human brain.
And there is no software patch for it.
That is a terrifying thought. But let's zoom out from the individual danger to the societal danger. We touched on rage bait a minute ago.
Yeah.
But when you scale that up to national politics, what happens?
Well, here's where it gets really fascinating and deeply concerning. We enter the realm of what's now called post-truth politics.
That phrase gets thrown around a lot. What does it actually mean in this specific context?
It means that the emotional impact of a statement begins to matter more than its factual accuracy. Clickbait culture has trained us over years to react to the headline, not to the evidence within the article. Sleet described the current media environment as an aggregation of outrage.
An aggregation of outrage. That's a heavy concept.
It means the entire ecosystem is designed to find, collect, and amplify whatever makes people the maddest. Nuance doesn't go viral. A headline like, "Politician proposes complex tax reform with potential pros and cons" gets 0 clicks. "Politician wants to destroy your savings and steal your home." That gets 1 million clicks and shares.
So the incentive structure itself eliminates the middle ground. It pushes everyone to the extremes.
Catherine Viner, the editor-in-chief of The Guardian, wrote a really powerful piece about this. She said that chasing down cheap clicks at the expense of accuracy and veracity undermines the fundamental value of journalism. If the truth is boring and lies are profitable, the market will always favor the lies.
And we see this across the political spectrum. This is not a left or right issue.
Absolutely not. The sources are very clear on this. They list sites from Breitbart on the right to the Huffington Post on the left, from Salon to Town Hall. The business model is completely politically agnostic. Both sides discovered they could profit by producing these short, shareable pieces that offer simple, immediate moral judgments.
It's confirmation bias as a service.
That's a perfect way to put it. They aren't trying to inform you, they're trying to affirm what you already believe, and crucially, make you angry at the other side.
And, I've noticed a new, weird defense mechanism recently. People use the word clickbait as a shield now.
What do you mean?
Like, if a news outlet publishes a story that is critical of a politician I happen to like, my first instinct, and the first instinct of many people, is to just say, oh, that's just clickbait, and dismiss it, even if it's a well-researched, 1,000-word investigative piece.
That is a very, very dangerous development, because if clickbait just becomes a synonym for news I don't like, then we've completely lost the ability to distinguish truth from fiction. The real clickbait has flooded the zone with so much garbage that we've started to distrust the real thing, too.
It's the boy who cried wolf, but the wolf is an algorithm.
Precisely, and we're all tired of hearing the shouting.
Okay, this is getting a little depressing. I feel like we are trapped in this giant Skinner box, just pressing buttons for dopamine while the world outside burns. Is there any good news? Is there a backlash? Have people started fighting back?
There is, yes. And delightfully, the resistance started with comedy.
Satire is always the best weapon.
Do you remember the website Clickhole?
Oh, I love Clickhole. It's from the same people as The Onion, right?
Yes. It launched around 2014, at the peak of all this. It was a direct parody of sites like Upworthy and BuzzFeed. They took the curiosity gap formula and pushed it to its absolute absurd limit.
They had those amazing headlines like 6 kinds of hay that are horse food.
Or my personal favorite, "This stick of butter is left out at room temperature. You won't believe what happens next." And you click it and it's just a time-lapse video of the butter melting.
It was so brilliant because it was deconstructing the joke.
Yeah.
It was holding a mirror up to all of us and saying, look how stupid this format is. Look what you're clicking on.
And it really worked. It helped break the spell for a lot of people.
Yeah.
It made us all realize how formulaic and predictable the manipulation had become.
But we can't just laugh it away. The tech companies themselves had to step in too, didn't they?
And they did. We gave Facebook a bit of a hard time earlier, but in 2014, they made a massive change to the newsfeed algorithm that actually did help a lot.
This was the big shift from just counting clicks to measuring time spent.
Correct. Before 2014, a click was a click. If you click on a link, the algorithm considered the article good. But Facebook realized that people were clicking, immediately realizing it was bait, and then bouncing right back to Facebook in a few seconds.
The bounce rate, a sign of a dissatisfied user.
So Facebook's engineers started measuring how long you stayed off site. If you clicked a link and stayed on that page for 3 minutes, they assumed you were actually reading the article. That's a signal of quality. If you came back in 3 seconds, that's a signal of bait. And they started algorithmically punishing the bait.
That actually explains why we saw that big shift toward long-form content for a while. You started seeing these huge, in-depth articles everywhere.
It forced publishers to actually put something of value on the page. You couldn't just trick people with the headline anymore. You had to entertain or inform them enough to keep them there.
And then there were the ad blockers. That was the consumers fighting back with code.
Yes, the rise of ad blockers completely destroyed the revenue model for the cheapest, lowest effort sites. If I can't show you the ads on my page, your click is literally worthless to me.
This pushed the entire industry toward native advertising
Yeah.
and sponsored content, right?
Which is a whole other can of worms, honestly. But in general, for a sponsored article to work, it has to be at least readable. A brand like Nike doesn't want their logo to be associated with a chumbox-style scam. They want high-quality storytelling. So the money started slowly flowing back toward quality, or at least better production value.
And we also have to give a shout out to the Save You a Click heroes on social media.
The stop clickbait communities.
I love these people. They see a headline that says, "Why this celebrity is quitting Hollywood forever," and they'll just comment right below it, "She's not. She's taking a 2-month break to have a baby."
Doing the Lord's work. It's a public service.
It's like a form of community policing for information. It closes the curiosity gap for everyone else so we don't have to give the publisher the ad revenue.
It's a small but powerful way of reclaiming our collective attention.
So to recap, we've gone from phishing hooks to the yellow journalism wars, to the psychological itch of the curiosity gap, to the brutal logic of the YouTube algorithm, and now to this weird stalemate where we are all fighting the machines with satire and ad blockers.
It's really a journey through the weirdest parts of human nature. Clickbait isn't just a technological annoyance, it is a mirror. It exploits the things that make us human, our intense curiosity, our desire for social connection, and our unfortunate tendency toward outrage.
It's humbling, really.
Yeah.
We like to think we are these rational, logical beings making informed decisions, but show us a picture of a secret door found in a basement, and we just turn into curious little monkeys who have to click the button.
We do. And if we connect all this to the bigger picture, I want to leave you, the learner, with a thought about agency.
Go on.
We complain about clickbait, we say we hate it, we say we want real news and deep, thoughtful content, but the algorithms are just prediction engines. At the end of the day, they are designed to give us what we want.
Or what we click on.
Which is their best proxy for what we want. If clickbait is still prevalent, and believe me, it means it is still working. It means that despite all our complaints, we are still clicking.
So, are you saying we're the villains of our own story?
We're the enablers. The algorithm is just holding up a mirror to our own lack of impulse control. The provocative thought is this: are we really mad at the beat, or are we just mad at ourselves for continuing to bite every single time?
That is deeply uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I feel personally attacked regarding my 1:30 a.m. browsing habits.
As you should.
But it's a necessary question. If we want a better media environment, we have to start by having better clicking habits.
We have to vote with our attention. It's the only currency that matters online.
Well, on that very heavy note, I want to thank you, the learner, for taking this deep dive with us. Hopefully the title of this discussion didn't overpromise.
I think we delivered.
I think so too. Thank you for listening all the way to the end. You've proven that human attention spans aren't quite dead yet.
And check your sources before you share.
And please, think before you click. We'll see you in the next deep dive.
Welcome to The Debate. So today we're going to be dissecting a mechanism that, well, it pretty much dictates the diet of our digital age. And that is, of course, clickbait. It's a term we all use, usually as an insult, to describe content that's just engineered to demand your attention.
Right. But you could also argue it's the very engine that keeps the free internet running.
And that is exactly the tension we're exploring today. I'll be arguing that clickbait is inherently a form of digital deception. It's a bait and switch that prioritizes metrics over truth and ultimately erodes trust.
And I'll be taking the dissenting view. I think the term is defined far too broadly. My position is that high engagement headlines are not actually clickbait, if they're factually accurate. I think often what we dismiss as bait is simply a rational and effective response to the economics of attention.
Well, let's look at the definitions, because the specific wording really reveals the problem here. If we use the frameworks from, say, Merriam-Webster or dictionary.com, clickbait isn't just about being catchy. It is defined by the quality of what you find when you get there. It's content designed to entice a click, specifically leading to material of, and this is the quote, dubious value.
Dubious value. I mean, that's pretty subjective, isn't it?
Okay, perhaps, but the mechanism itself isn't subjective. The term, it relies on that fishing analogy for a reason. Bait implies a hook that's been disguised by an enticement. The fish thinks it's getting food, but it's actually getting caught. It's a breach of this sort of unspoken contract between the publisher and the reader. The goal isn't to inform, it's to maximize ad revenue by misrepresenting what's on the other side of that link.
And I think that analogy collapses when the food is actually real, though. I want to bring in the argument made by Ben Smith, who was the editor-in-chief of BuzzFeed back in 2014. He drew a really hard line between curiosity and deception. His point was that a headline is only clickbait if it lies.
That feels like a pretty convenient distinction for the architect of BuzzFeed to make, don't you think?
Well, maybe, but it is a functional one. Look, Smith used a specific example. A headline about a 5-year-old girl raising money for her father's terminal cancer treatment. Now that is sensational. It exploits emotion. It absolutely demands a click. But if the article actually tells that story, Smith argues it's not clickbait. It's just an eye-catching presentation of the truth. If we label every effective hook as bait, we're basically criticizing storytelling just for being interesting.
But you're ignoring the psychological mechanism being used to get that click. And this brings us to the curiosity gap. This isn't just about whether the story is technically true. It's about how the user is being manipulated. Facebook, in their own technical efforts to downrank clickbait, defined it as headlines that withhold crucial information. They create this artificial information gap that exploits a user's cognitive need for closure. You aren't clicking because you want the content, you're clicking to scratch a psychological itch that the headline forced upon you.
I have to say, I find that curiosity gap argument incredibly restrictive. I mean, if we follow Facebook's logic that a headline has to tell you exactly what you're about to see, then a joke without a punchline is clickbait. A movie trailer that doesn't show the ending is clickbait. Withholding information is the basis of all suspense. If I write "you won't believe what happened," and then I show you something that is genuinely unbelievable, I haven't exploited you, I've entertained you.
You may have entertained, yes, but at what cost to the ecosystem? This is the macro issue for me, the economic incentives. When you prioritize the click above everything else, you degrade the entire information environment. Catherine Viner, the editor-in-chief at The Guardian, she argued that chasing down cheap clicks at the expense of accuracy and veracity undermines the fundamental value of journalism. It just creates a race to the bottom, where the only metric that matters is the click-through rate, not the quality of understanding.
But you're blaming the players for the rules of the game. We have to view this within the attention economy. Look at the data that YouTube released at CES. They revealed that 70% of watch time on their platform is driven by recommendations, by the algorithm, not by people actively searching. And the data also shows that videos with hyperbolic, high-energy titles, they objectively have higher click-through rates.
So because the algorithm rewards it, we should just accept it?
No, because it works. It becomes a survival mechanism. Creators are just rationally optimizing for an algorithm that favors engagement. If you write a dry academic headline in an ecosystem that demands sticky content, you will disappear. It isn't about degrading the ecosystem with malice. It's about navigating the reality that attention is a finite and very valuable commodity.
But that survival mechanism has very deep roots in unethical practices. I mean, we can draw a direct line from modern clickbait right back to checkbook journalism and yellow journalism from the late 19th century. Those eras focused entirely on scandal-mongering and sensation just to sell papers. Slate described the modern iteration of this as the aggregation of outrage. And we see this everywhere with rage baiting and political discourse. It's not just harmless fluff. It's a tool used to polarize people and profit from their moral judgments.
I think you have to distinguish between the extremes and the norm. I mean, obviously, phishing or using clickbait to spread malicious code, what they call click fraud, is illegitimate. But the market has a way of correcting for the aggressive media practices you're worried about. We saw a massive backlash starting around 2014. Ad blockers became hugely popular. The algorithms were updated to filter out low-quality content. We even saw the rise of satirical sites like The Onion's Clickhole, which parodied these forms so effectively that it actually forced publishers to pull back. The audience isn't stupid. They eventually learn to identify the trap.
They might learn, but the trap just keeps evolving. So to summarize my position,
While I understand the economic pressures, the term clickbait correctly identifies a pattern of overpromising and underdelivering. Whether it's a curiosity gap or rage baiting, it treats the audience as a metric to be harvested, not as a public to be informed.
And I maintain that while dishonesty is always wrong, dismissing all sensational or curiosity-inducing content as clickbait just ignores the reality of digital media economics. If the headline catches your eye and the content delivers on that promise, then the label of clickbait is, I think, misapplied. We should absolutely criticize fraud, but we shouldn't punish curiosity.
It is a difficult line to walk in an internet built on sticky content.
It is, indeed. And it leaves us all to wonder where the line between good marketing and outright deception truly lies.